Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first Pentart live of the week. Just let me find myself in my systems and then I can sort out what I need to sort out. And then we'll see who comes in. I don't know about where you are, but the weather in the UK has been, shall we say, highly variable. I started out with it throwing it down. It's actually quite nice at the moment. Remains to be seen whether it will stay like that or whether it will chuck it down and my craft room then become very noisy. Right, let me stop that binging because I've got Facebook open on the computer, so we'll shut that down. And there we are. I think we're all okay. Good evening, Jan. Hello, Juliana. Welcome. Good evening, Sheila. So, I've got a bit of a cryptic title for tonight, and I'm back using Timeless Collection, and I have just 2 pieces of resin tonight, and it looks like one of those needs a little bit of a trim. Let me see if I can find a pair of scissors, because that's my bad casting, but hey ho, that's okay. I can trim that down. Pair of scissors, that will work for me. She might get a better pair of scissors. Oh, she says, stomping on stuff. I know it's almost unheard of for me not to have 3 tons of stuff, but to be honest, I've not been feeling very brilliant, and I wanted to pair it back tonight because I could. Hello, Isabel. Welcome, my darling. Good evening, Stephanie. So let me just do a little bit of moving around of this little lot because we've got some prep. And you're thinking, there's no lace on this piece of on this work surface, and you're right, there isn't. But we're going to do something a little bit different. Hence, the title is somewhat cryptic, because cryptic is sometimes good. There we are. Good evening, Connie. Hello, Isabella. Welcome. Let me just move this all out of the way. Oh, and I've lent my dies to someone else, so which is cool. So we're going to have a little bit of shenaniganing. Yeah, that will work, and that will work. Good. So I have a little heart-shaped piece of wood here. It is approximately so it's about 8 3/4 inches by well, height's always difficult. So approximately 8.5 by 8.5 inches. I'm assuming as no one has said anything to me, you can hear me. If not, please shout now. This is a beautiful stencil, and this is where the idea of lace comes into the make this evening. It comes from the Timeless Collection, and it's one of the bigger stencils. And as you can see, it's not big enough to go side to side on my piece of wood. And I do sort of want to make sure actually I've got stuff on the edges. So we're going to just tilt this, because I'm going to have a focal element here. If I tilt this, I'm going to, and it'll mean I can add more in and there and cover this area that's going to be the problem. So let's just take that down to where we can, and then we can build from there. Thank you. So I have out Pentart's modelling paste. Now, there are several model pastes in the collection, and you often see me using structure paste, which has got a grittiness to it. And I like the effect it gives in terms of it being a faux wool, or even for snow or cement. It's fine. And then there is modelling paste and modelling paste light, which are both white materials. Now the modelling paste light stays soft and flexible even when it is dry, and that's not what I want for this project, because for reasons that will become clear. So that's why I have picked modelling paste. But to all intents and purposes, apart from the weight of the jar, it looks exactly the same as the modelling paste light. So we're just going to pop this onto here, and I'm going to pop a light. And yes, I'm working on an unprimed surface, and that's just fine. I don't have a problem with that. There we are. And I'll give this a bit of a dry, and then I can move the stencil, and we'll be able to do a bit of jiggery pokery to get that. So this has a depth to it and will dry absolutely solid, but with as a smooth surface, and it will resist sprays. It doesn't resist paint, but it definitely resists sprays. So let's just quick that up off now. You see that stencil just is beautiful. Let me pop that up there and grab a wipe. I'm going to give this a little bit of a blast dry, because I want to add some stuff into that edge. So let me just take this off around the edges. There we are, rather than getting mucky hands from here. That works. And then I'm going to give this, pop that up onto there. I'm just going to clean this stencil down, because one of the issues when you move stencils around is if you're not very careful, you will end up with paste on the opposite side and then pop it down where you don't want it on your project. And if you are going to move stencils around a project, then you're definitely better off. You can see, I can see that it's already gone through in some of those areas, and those will leave marks on my piece, which I don't want. So hence we'll give that a little bit of a clean. I'll pop that over there, and then I'm going to lid that just while I give this a little bit of a blast dry. Let's get rid of that. There we are. It is a truly beautiful collection. So I'm very conflicted. So some people used to do lots of very nice big stencils, and then they sort of moved away from big stencils. And a lot of the recent collections have had 12 by 12 centimetre, so really quite diddy stencils. And then they've had tall, thin stencils, so 6 by 12, 6 by 9, something like that, which is great for borders. But sometimes you want a piece that's going to work as a background, and particularly for a stencil that doesn't obviously appear to be one that you can layer on top of each other or tessellate to build a pattern. It can be quite difficult then to get one that covers. So the bigger the stencils, I think, are sometimes quite helpful, particularly when you want an all-over pattern. And I just concentrate on this side of here, and then I can fill in this gap. I choose which bit of the stencil I want to use. It dries relatively quickly, which is also quite helpful. Good evening, girl. How are you? And this is all it right. That definitely needs to dry. Yeah, it's a bit thicker. And if you're not careful when you're heating anything with modelling paste, it will pop up. So just keep your heat gun moving around a little bit. I actually don't mind a little bit of added texture when I make creating like this, but if you want it to be completely smooth, then keep your heat gun moving about. And this is a heat gun or embossing gun, not a hairdryer, and not a DIY heat stripper gun, because that would clearly burn everything, which is not the look we're wanting. Yeah. So hopefully, yay. So now let's just see what area we can get into here that's going to, I think, work reasonably well. Now, you see, that's not going to work because of that, whereas that will work. That will work. I'm just going to have to be slightly careful, I think, with what I put in. Let's see if I can get a better area with a different part of that stencil. Nope, but I can add in multiple layers. So I am going to pop that into there. There we are. And we're going to do this in stages. Nothing says you have to do it all in a huge hurry, does it? So that's an area. So I can be quite precise with what I'm doing. I'm just filling in that area that's a bit empty. There we are. I can pop that into there. So that we'll have that. I know that that's gone through there. So let me just pop that up there and clean the back of that stencil. I don't want to waste all of that paste, so I'm going to be very, very careful. I'm going to give that a little bit more of a blush dry. So we're just going to build up a pattern. Little by little. It is quite helpful, I think, sometimes just to know how to extend a stencil's pattern that's not the right size for what you want to do. Let's just pick up another bit of this pattern and let's see what we've got. So there we are. Yeah. I think that will work. I think that will work. So I'm going to pick up that piece there. Don't mind a little bit of that coming in. Some of that is going to end up covered ultimately anyway, and that's also fine. There we are. So I'm just filling in those gaps. There. Okie dokie. Do I want that's going to be covered, and that will be fine. So let me just pop this back into here. Give this, let's lid that pot of modelling paste, pop it out the way. Let's do that over. Thank you, Jan, for saying it's very pretty. Good evening, Sarah. How are you, my darling? I think there's a few lives going on tonight, but that's just life, isn't it? You can't do everything. There we are. So let's just pop that into there. Give that a little bit of a clean up. Pop that up onto some pots of paint, and I'm just going to clean this. Yeah, we all know I'm not overly precious with my stuff, but I don't particularly want to ruin a stencil, because if you look after them, you'll get many, many years of use. But this is, as I say, a beautiful, beautiful stencil. And there we are. We can pop that over there. Get rid of that. Excellent. And that can go back over in the pile of stuff. Now, unusually for me, I haven't done any priming today. But that's partly intentional, but it's to reinforce also the fact that I always prime my resin pieces. I either use bonding primer, or in this instance I'm using primer paste. So let me just pop this onto here. Let's give it a little coat of the white, keeping this the colour palette soft and gentle, in line with the fact that I've titled the project A Little Bit of Lace. And this comes from the soft mould that comes, one of the soft moulds that comes with the collection. And this piece comes from the frames mould that comes with the Stamperia Timeless collection. And there's quite a lot of these little elements, but they're very, very, very pretty. Once it's painted, I will lift it up and you'll be able to see a lot more detail in that. Yuck, yuck, she says. Mucky, mucky fingers to the 4, 5 and 6. Not good, not good, not good. So Let's just give these a wee bit of a brush dry. Let's keep our desk reasonably tidy today. We have got quite a lot that's going to need just to be dried for a whole host of reasons because of the technique that I'm wanting to show. So whilst I've got my heat gun on that, I'm just going to give this a jolly good clean. Keep the space so it's not too distracting and messy, because it won't stay that way for very long. We all know it won't stay that way. And let's just get this properly dry. And can carry on drying for the moment. And we're going to give this a lovely go. Good evening, Pipart. Welcome. Welcome. How are you? And how is everyone in Canada? And more importantly, how is Papa G? I just need to get this properly dry, which is always helpful. And there's a lot to do about things when things need to be dried. Things need to be dried. I can pop that on the top of there. They're not going to stay there, but I just want to get some of these edges more dry before I smush it with paint. Now then, choices. We have choices, ladies. If I show you the colours of the main embellishment that I'm going to use, which is this, do we want that for the background, which is denim, which is a chalky paint soft, that colour? Do we want olive tree green, which is like a bluey green for the background? Or would we like pistachio for the background? All of those colours will work with the paper collection that I've got and the other embellishments. So which one do we want? Denim, olive tree green, or pistachio for the background? I'll just give you a few seconds for someone to respond to me. You see there's pistachio. Thank you very much, Jan. You're the first person who's popped up a response on my screen. So that's what we will go with. That's all absolutely fine. Good evening, Sarah. Welcome, my darling. Right, so hopefully that is now dry enough. It's never quite guaranteed, is it? But there we are. The last one was the pistachio. Yeah, so that looks like we've got pretty universal agreement there for pistachio. And I have to say that it might not have been my first choice, but I love it as a colour, and I did pop it out to use. So let's go with that. It's nice to be able to be interactive, I think. There we are. So this is a chalky paint. Okay, this one is clearly quite old. Let me just clear that mess out of the top of it. There we are. Yeah, it's soft enough in there. There we are. So, but you could do this technique with the antiquing paints, not the antiquing gels, but the antiquing paints. That would work just quite well. You could do it with acrylic paint mats, and you can do it with equally with the chalky paints. So choose the paint color that works for you. Don't be unduly worried about the name of the type of paint for this project, because it really won't matter. Thank you, Sarah. So we definitely have a universal agreement that we're wanting the pistachio. There is a beautiful sagey green in the Timeless collection, so the pistachio will, I think, work quite nicely. It's not quite the same color but tone, but actually it'll provide a little bit of contrast, but within the green family. And I just need to get this all covered. And you can see that it is covering, and it might need 2 coats to cover the modelling paste colour solidly, but this isn't going to matter for this project, for this this make anyway. because of what I'm wanting to do. I do need to get into every nook and flipping cranny though, and when you've added modelling paste, you've got lots of nooks and crannies and depths and things in. This is exactly why I needed it to be properly dry, so I can scrabble into those, into all of the recesses created from the texture of that paste. There we are. So that's okay. So let's just, we've gone very grey and windy here. It was sunny, but the sun has gone to bed. So it's been very variable here, Sarah. Very, very variable here. There have been some nice days, parts of the day. There have definitely been some great parts of the days. And it has thrown it down. The weather forecasters were correct. The northwest has been battered by a series of very heavy showers. They haven't lasted ages, but they definitely have been sufficient to get you very wet if you were out and about. I just need to get this dry now. Because that beautiful lace pattern that I put on there with the modelling paste is no longer visible. Whoever knew? But I do have a plan. Yes, definitely, I would have chosen the blue, but I give people a choice, and I'm happy to go with the choices because I think it's great to be pushed out of my comfort zone sometimes, and we all see things slightly differently. As you know, I am a very tonal person, so going off piece is not my number. But I did, I have put that paint out as one that I thought would work very nicely with the collection, and that's the most important thing with what I'm doing. And when I get a paper collection to use, the first thing I do is have a dig through my stash, and I pick out the distress inks that will work, my archival art inks that will work, and also the paints that I've got of the correct colour to use, that will work. And sometimes I want absolutely all tonal, and sometimes I want contrast. So it depends a little bit on what you're doing in terms of your make. So that's still definitely too wet down there for me. Go near the next step. Let's give this a reasonably good brush on. I'm going to then let it cool down while I paint the two pieces. I know, look at me, 2 pieces of resin. That must be an absolute first for me not to have masses and masses of resin pieces on the go. So that needs to cool down, and I might. So when you use a heat gun to dry something, what happens is it dries the surface, traps the water underneath. So if you don't just give it a little bit of time to cool down and the water move, then and you just plow straight on, what you find is it's all soft underneath, and that's not what I need. So hence the decision to to do this. Now then, I am going to go very different for these 2 pieces. She says, there we are. So this is cream white. It's not quite, the ivory has quite a yellow underbase, whereas this is definitely has more of a brown underbase colour to it, and it's a softer colour change. I could have gone with ivory for the collection, that would work, but I prefer this because it's not quite as yellow. It's just got a very little hint of, look at the you can't see the detail in there, you will be able to later on. So let's just give I know, almost unheard of. But actually the piece isn't very big, and I've just got such a big focal element from the collection, which is one of the die-cut chipboards, that I didn't want to add lots and lots of pieces to it, because I felt it was going to overwhelm the size of the print. So often I use my resin pieces as the dominant part, or the design features of my make, whereas here I want the background to be a design feature, and these resin pieces are just little accent pieces. So that's why I paired it like that. I've no intention of being on live for hours and hours and hours tonight, so I'm pleased to say that some of my medicines that I've started on recently, I think is kicking in. I've had a thumping headache for several weeks now, which made me feel quite poorly. I don't know why. I needed some medicine to get things under control before then. So let's just do that. So hopefully those aren't dry. Let us just pick up a little bit of varnish for those, because we are going to distress those. There we are. Let's get another small brush. We won't take much. So I do think about the lives and what I'm going to do and what might be some useful, apart from just having a nice make, which I think has to be a given. I do try to think and try and have different learning points for all of my lives, or a different focus for my lives, either in terms of products, techniques, or style. Just because otherwise, when you do as many lives as I do, I think you'd find it all a bit boring if they were all absolutely, essentially the same projects, just with different colours and different shapes. But, I'm prepared to be corrected if you think that that's not an issue, and that you're happy either which way. And that's so cool. Just with these, a little bit of a strap. Oops, is there sticky? Need to get that properly down. That's definitely still sticky. Put that over there for the moment. Let's come back to this. It still feels damp where I added that stuff at the bottom. And this is what I mean, that I would need 2 coats to give a completely solid finish over the modelling paste. But actually for this make it doesn't matter, because we're going to take advantage of the texture in a minute. Pop those over there, because otherwise they're going to get covered in dust. So I think that is probably reasonable. I might regret this, but there we are. So I now have just a sanding pad. It's not particularly hard grit, but I do want the lace to be the feature of this. And the joy of using the modelling paste is that it's solid, and it will allow me to sand over it. The modelling paste light is a bit too soft for this, whereas this is going to give a distressed feel to it. But you can carry on and take blood back as much or as little as you want. I've taken a bit more of the base green off over there, and that's fine. I don't have any issues with that. So we're just going to need to do a little bit of sanding back, and then we'll wipe it down. And it's better to go soft and gentle and repeat than scrub at things, okay, with great gusto. Just as well, because I saw my personal trainer this morning, because I'm having to address my global health and fitness for a whole host of reasons, and he had me doing things that have made my arms ache. So I don't think I could give this a really good push if I tried, but hey ho. There we are, we'll just carry on. But generally, you're better off coming back and forth over, repeatedly, rather than trying to lift it all up in one layer. And some of this is going to get covered. You see, I'm rather hoping that in a few weeks' time, if I've got bingo wings, it's because I've got the loose skin, not because I've got no muscles. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I might have to just a little bit more over there. Oh, do. So it's reasonably even. And now you can see why I chose the idea of a little bit of lace. If you want it to all be completely, you can carry on and take it all back until you can see more. But I'm rather liking that vintage distressed look. So I use the modelling paste light in moulds, in the soft moulds or thin cake lace type moulds. And you get a flexible casting that you can then shape around things. Or if I want, generally that's where I will use the modelling paste light. So like everything in this world, it has, everything has its place, and some things that you can double up on. You could use it for this, Stephanie, if that's the one you've got, but you will definitely have to be a little bit more gentle with the rubbing back process. I'm just taking off the damp that's on the surface of here. So I've now got a beautiful faux embroidery onglet look, I think, on there. And it's a bit distressed at the edges, and that's fine. Okay. There we are. But I rather like that, just as it is. Nice, simple, and effective. So let's pop that over to the side, give it a little bit of a dry, she says. Clean your hands of the dust. And let's take these two pieces. So there are both greys and gold tones in the statement die cut that I'm intending to use as the central focal point. Might take you a while to do that, Stephanie, but perfectly doable. Perfectly doable. So I actually picked up it says it green silver. Silver. It's definitely silver. Metallic Lasur. Have I even opened this pot? I think I have. Yes, I have, because I can see that I have. There we are. So let's just add, and let's grab another wipe so it's to hand. And let's just add a little bit of detail into these two pieces. So I just want a little bit of shimmer. There we are. Let's just pop that into there. There we are. So it's Lasur, so it will wipe back. And there we are. There we are, there we are, there we are. So it's now very pretty. And the shimmer isn't going to help because there is a lot of shimmer in those Lasurs. There we are. But it's just going to add just a little bit extra into there. Let's come around the edges. Don't need it on the edges so much. There we are. So in the antiquing gels, there are no metallic colours. So the Lysergia, the watercolor Lysergias are quite nice with the shimmer in them and the metallics. There we are. It's going to sit in the nooks and the crannies. There we are. There's lots of detail in it. And as I say, it's got lots. And you really don't need very much of it. And there are lots and lots of metallic colours in it. I don't understand why it's called green silver. Because to me, it's definitely silver. But hey ho. So I think you can see just how well those will work with that piece, which is cool. Right. So we have all of our components ready, ladies. I know. Right, let me stand up and then I can do a bit more standing up when it comes to assembling. So let's pop that there. So that is going to sit there. So let me see what we have. So this is just a die cut element from the paper pad using one of the new dies from Stamperia. It's got several heart pieces in it. Well, that's the one I want. And I've just cut that out from a piece of the blue paper. So we're keeping to the heart theme, and we're going to build our piece together. And there we are. Good. So I've got Print Art Express glue here because that's my go-to glue, as we all know. There we are. That's unbound that. So let's just pop a little bit of that onto there, and that can sit there. So I've deliberately centered that notch in the notch of that heart. Now then, what have we got here? We need something. We need some spacing. So, so I've just grabbed a large piece of cardboard, because why wouldn't I have a large piece of cardboard to hand? And let's just chop. If I had a better pair of scissors, bigger pair. Oh, that, you see that? I knew I had them out. There we are. You knew there was a use for your packaging, didn't you? Of course you did. There we are. Let's just chop that, because it's cheap and cheerful, and otherwise we'd go in the recycling, wouldn't it? There we are. So that can now go on the floor. Let's just chop another piece of this, and then we can just add some layers to our piece. We'll have a little fight with the piece of cardboard because that we're chopping, ladies, because why wouldn't we? Right, let's just chop that bit there. And the joy of cardboard, of course, is you can add as many layers as you want. So that's also cool, and it's cheap and cheerful. And if you don't have MDF bits, which you'll often see me using, cardboard will work. There we are. Excellent. Yeah. So this, as I say, is a chipboard element. They're much thicker than the ephemera pieces, and I'm just going to chop this down, and then we're going to add a little bit of shaping. So here, just going to give a little bit of support. There we are. Let's just pop that onto there, and then let's just take a bit more of that, and that bit can go onto there. That's just there we are. See, that's someone who'll be liking the ums and the ahs and oohs and ifs. There we are. And we can add a second layer if we want to. I don't particularly need this to be hugely dimensional, but I do want some space for tucking chipboard elements under as well. So there we are. Let's just pop that into there. Pop that onto there. Now, if it's going to bother you in the piece, feel free to take some of the base colour paint and add that in. There we are. There we are. It's just adding a little bit of depth for me. There we are. Okay. So that can sit there, on there. Comme ça. Right. Now, look at this rag. This is just medical gauze. Okay. So it's cheap. It's cheerful. It's multi-layered. If you've got leftover dressings, it just does make life a little bit easier. So I'm just going to squiggle a little bit of the gauze underneath there and give it a poke. Technical term. I'm just going to give it a poke. Okay, I'm going to add more layers on top so it won't matter. So I'm thinking that this might be almost a bit like a cloud, if that makes sense, over there. And I've got another area here. So that's just, I've got 2 layers. Yeah, I've got 2 layers there. So let's just add another frothy bit here. Onto there. And let's just give that a little bit of a poke into there. There we are. I might add just a little bit more into there. I think that's just pop a little bit extra there. So we're just wispiness, cloud-like. Well, that's where my brain's going, ladies. Might not be where yours is going. There we are. Right, now then. So we've got 1 piece, 2 piece. We've got some die-cut flowers we may or may not use. There we are. Now, we have some more elements. Because of course we've got more elements. So I've got pieces that are cut from the paper pad, and I'm just grabbing the chipboardy pieces. Those are all chipboardy pieces. Now there should be several of those little hearts lurking around over here. In fact, there should be more. There we are. There's lots of them in the die cut pack. There we are. And we've got a title, Make a Wish, also in the pack. So we're going to start building some layers and some extra detail into here. So I'm just going to give that a little bit of a scrunch, and I'm going to tuck that underneath there. And for the sake of the live, I am going to use a hot glue gun because it's just going to be easier. Okay. And I'm adding paper, so it's not going to be particularly heavy. Come on. Okie dokie. Why have we got a problem? That's because we've got a great big lump of glue there. So let me just oink that cream cracker bit of glue. I wonder why I've got that. Well, I know exactly why I've got that, ladies, because did I turn my hot glue gun off? No, I didn't. I left it on overnight. Very, very dangerous, ladies. Not to be recommended at all, at all, at all. So we're going to stick that under there. And I'm going to want an embellishment here and an embellishment cluster here. Okay. So we're going to take this piece and pop that over there. So that's going underneath. Okay. And then we're going to just build our layers bit by bit by bit. I might have been a mistake putting that into there because I can't see half my other bits and pieces, but I know I had out as pieces of paper. There we are. So that one is going to go on top of there. and this piece is going to tuck underneath. So I'm going to build some depth with my hot glue, and I'm going to tuck that underneath there. There we are. Let it sit up. There we are. So it's just poking its way out from the piece. We've got another little bit there. That's going to sit on. I need a piece cut to follow this down and round. I'm wanting another piece of the floral. Let me just see where we're going. I'm going to pop that one underneath there. There we are. You see why I added the pieces, and I can carry on and add more pieces as I want to. So I'm going to pop, she says, not requiring that there. That piece is going to sit on there, and that piece is going to tuck its way into there, just poking its way out. Now I'm being very naughty using that there. There we are. So I'm now going to pop a little bit of a floral here, I think. Right. And I'm going to give this one a bit of a haircut. And I'm going to tuck it into there because I can. And that way I get a twofer. Yeah, I get two pieces for the sake of one. So it just looks like there's a little piece poking its way out from there. So I have, these are die cut pieces. Okay. So let's just grab a little ball tool and shape these round. These are just cut from the papers, ladies. There's nothing complicated with this. If that's too big, just grab yourself a pen or something that's a little bit smaller. There we are. I've got a different ball tool here, okay, and I can pop this in to here and come back and just shape these. Now, if you've got a soft mat, that will work. So this is a different way of making your flowers to last week when we used the fabric, yeah, to do. So I'm going to pop a little floral there, and I've got smaller florals here. So let's just give those a little round and round and round, round and round and round and round, and round and round. And then let's just take this smaller one and pop it into place, and then that can sit into there. So I'm just going to tuck that, just tucking it into there, and I'm going to put the second piece off-centered into there, just literally offsetting the petals and giving it a little squash. Okay. And I've got a little leaf there. So let's just add, these are cut from vellum from the die, so that can sit into there. And I'm going to pop this floral tucked into here. So it's just about building and layering and just taking your time. There we are. Let's just stick that underneath there. And I'm going to have that little heart tucked there. Okay. Oh, she says. And I've got a little leaf from the collection. So let's just pop that leaf into there. Okay. And I want another flower in here, but just because you've layered one doesn't mean you need to layer all of the pieces. So let's just go with possibly a single layer here. There we are. Round and round and round and round. We're just going to do that. Yuck, she says. There we are. And we're going to tuck in, I think, let's see where we want to pop that. Do I want it on the boat? Yeah, I think I am going to pop it onto there. So that can go there. And we're just going to squash it into place. Okay. and I've got another floral, and I've got this half piece. Okay, so do I like that half piece tucked into there? Possibly not, but let us just chop it a little bit further. Yeah, it's all about just see that now works tucked into there. It's a little suspicion that we've got another flower tucked underneath. Oops, she says, and she slid it in a bit further than she wanted, but that's also just okay. So that piece can now also tuck into there, or shall I tuck it there? It's a question. I think I'm going to tuck it there, just that little bit higher up. So you don't very often see me using the chipboards. I think they're often quite chunky, and they're not necessarily my most favourite activity, but that's okay. And you can break up a die cut, so let's just pop that into there, and let's just tuck that in and underneath. So let's just grab that, lift that, shovel it underneath, put that wispiness into there. Okie dokie. And yeah, now where's that gone? There we are. So we've got that piece in there, we've got that piece in there. Ideally, this would have a piece of some gel medium with it, ladies, rather than just that. Now I know I pulled off a little extra leaf, and that's fine. So I'm going to stick that leaf into there. And of course, the beauty of a die cut is that you can cut and chop as many of these as you want. Okay. Now, let's get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that. And let's see where we're going with that. And do I want another piece underneath there? Or do I want it tucked underneath there? I quite like it there. So we're going to pop that just there. And I do have rub-ons out, but actually I'm not too sure I'm going to use the rub-on pieces. There we are. Okay. So I have, to echo the heart, some hearts. So I'm going to pop that big, these are just from the chipboard elements. Okay. So we're going to pop that one there, and that one is going to tuck into there. So let's just add that into there, the little heart, to echo the other heart. It's quite a few of these in that die cut pack. I think there's still, you know, if I pulled it out, there'd be another one of them into here. There we are. Okay. And then we've got Make a Wish. Which I am just going to build up so it can sit in there, balanced across those. So that's another little paper floral. So I'm going to tuck that into there. And I've got rub-ons, which I think I'm not going to use. And that's pretty much all of the pieces that I had out. Now at this stage, we can keep with the silver. Definitely don't want black, that's for certain. Good evening, Anthony. Welcome, my darling. Okay. So this is a contour pen. Let's make sure it's working. Yeah, it is. So I'm going to give my flower a blob as a centre, and that one also a blob as a centre, because I think that will work quite nicely to make it more circular. And those will sink as they settle down. And let's just add some little extra pieces. Accent that heart. Let's just turn that round to make my life easier. Pop that into there. Okay. And I think I might just add three more blobs there and a little blob there, and we might add another couple of blobs there. And then you can just add till you're happy with the balance of your piece, because these are subtle additions and I'm keeping them in with my clusters of my pieces. There we are. There we are. There we are. And I could carry on. I've got more pieces over here. I've got a big blob of glue there. That's going to be irritating, but hey ho. Let's see what we want to do, whether we want to add anything else. I've lent my dies to someone else, otherwise I might put another die cut flower into there, and I think these pieces are just a bit big. But let us see how I feel. Thank you very much. Thanking you. There we are. So literally I'm just using my hand to shape that. I'm going to pop that into there. Oops, she says. Do I want to add? Do I want to add or not? Yes, I am going to add. I am going to go for it, ladies. I'm just going to pop that into there. Yeah, she says, burning a finger with the hole in the middle of it. Oh, yeah. So, yeah. So, we have a lace effect background made with our stencil, simply embellished with die cut elements from Coordinating Paper Collection, the die cut chipboards, and the other pieces. I know what I was going to do. I'm going to add some of the gold onto there we are. That's what I was going to do. So I'm just adding those subtle extra bit touches that just make a big difference to the overall piece. Do I want to add any more? No, I'm going to leave it at that. So thank you very much for spending some time with me this evening, for your company. My plan is to be live for Pentart next Tuesday, whilst I continue to look after my overall health and get some medicines and things under control. But in the meantime, there is our piece. There we are. And ladies, your choice of the pistachio has worked really nicely, hasn't it? Because it allows the additional elements to really pop off the background, because it provides just a little bit of contrast to the whole piece. Before I forget, I'm going to undo my heat gun. So I hopefully will see you on the Pentart Live next Tuesday. And I will continue to take a break from my own page lives until I feel fit enough to be able to do it. So for the moment, ladies, please take care, look after yourselves, and don't forget, if I inspire you, to tag me in the projects you make, and otherwise have a good week. Bye.